Hey guys, I'm Chad Hoover. Welcome to today's video where I'm going to talk to you about the top 5 keys to kayak fishing success. Fish on! That's a toad, brother. Golly! Hey guys, listen, before we jump into today's video, I have to thank our sponsor, North Alabama Mountain Lakes, for helping make this video possible. Look, if you want to plan the ultimate bass fishing destination to one of the best bass fishing places on the planet, be sure to consider North Alabama, and when you get ready to plan your trip, head over to northalabama.org and download the destination guide. All right guys, so the number one key to kayak fishing success, in my opinion, is to have a plan, okay? There's a saying in the military, fail to plan, plan to fail, okay? And so I'm not saying you have to have a crazy elaborate plan. You don't have to have waypoints and a milk run set up. What you can do is pick the place that you're gonna launch and know how much water you plan to cover and know how much water you can cover. By and large, if you just go fishing and all you do is plan on going fishing, that's probably what you'll do. You'll just go fishing. You won't go catching. There's a certain amount of confidence that comes from having a plan. Let me explain that. So let's just say the night before you spent some time on Google Earth, you spent some time on Navionics, you spent some time on Google Earth and Navionics, you used your mapping software in your graph and you found this juicy spot. There's just something added to your confidence about that, of knowing where you're going. Even if you get there and it doesn't quite turn out to be what you thought it was, you still went into it with a lot of confidence. So my goal every time I go fishing is to have a primary, a backup, and a backup spot. 3 spots that I plan on fishing, 3 spots that I plan on having some success. So I try to be in the right place at the right time by using something like Bass Forecast or some other, Lunar program to determine when the fish should be biting. If I'm in the right place at the right time, I'm at a situation where my confidence is through the roof. If you go there and you don't have a plan and you just plan on launching, you're like, oh, that looks good over there, or that looks good over there, you're gonna spend a lot of time second guessing yourself and just looking for somewhere to fish. Plan before you go. Again, even if you just simply have the Navionics app or Google Maps and you pick a few spots that look good, a little depression, a little ridge, a little hump, something like that, but have a plan. As you get more and more into kayak fishing, you can make that plan more elaborate, you can make it more detailed, you can build on it. But the number one thing that I find anglers doing who don't have success is just going out there and going fishing. And if that's all you plan to do, that's probably what'll happen. All right, so the number 2 key to kayak fishing success is gonna go back a little bit to the boat that you purchased, and that is to stand up. More often than not, standing up does 2 things for me. One, it increases my perspective. It allows me to see things that I couldn't see other ways. How many times have you guys ever been paddling, motoring, pedaling, easing along, and you see a big boil in the water or a fish take off and spook? And if you had just stood up and saw that stump 15, 20 yards, 15, 20 feet before you got there and made a cast to it, you probably would have caught that fish. So more often than not, standing up is gonna do 2 major things for you. First, it's gonna allow you to see targets. It's gonna allow you to make presentations to those targets before you get close enough to spook the fish. But the second thing it's gonna do is it's gonna prolong your fishing trip. And I'm gonna tell you why. It doesn't matter how comfortable your seat is. It doesn't matter how many kayak cushions you put on it, which is also gonna prolong your fishing day in my opinion. But the ability to stand up, get some blood flowing, get off your butt, get your juices going, get the hips moving, doing all that kind of stuff is gonna allow you to stay on the water longer. It's kind of like when you're on a road trip and you get out of the car and when you walk around, it just feels good. And maybe you end up in the folklore section at the Pilot gas station looking at stuff you shouldn't look at because you just don't want to go get back in the truck yet, right? Same thing. So the more you can stand up and stretch your legs, the better you're going to feel over the course of the day. So you're going to prolong your fishing trip. Time on the water almost always results in more experience about that fishery and more fish. So the number 2 tip that I'm going to give you to kayak fishing success is stand up. All right, guys, so the number 3 key to kayak fishing success is to invest in electronics. And this isn't a sales pitch. I don't care what brand you buy. I personally choose Lowrance because I think they've got the easiest to use interface, and probably because I'm the most familiar with them and I don't want to change. But again, I'm a big fan of Lowrance. The major reason that I tell you to invest in electronics is you need to know how deep the water is, you need to know what the water temperature is, and you need to know where the bait is, okay? There's a thing in fire safety called the fire triangle, right? You can't have a fire without one of those three things: the fire, the catalyst, and the fuel. Well, the fire triangle in fishing is food, oxygen, and temperature. And you've got to have those things to find bass. So I can't tell you how many times I've been easing along, running the motor, paddling, pedaling, whatever, drifting in the wind, look at my graph and just see it light up with bait fish. Then my confidence goes through the roof. Ooh, I found the bait. Next thing you're looking for is those little streaks going through it. Oh, I found fish feeding on the bait. But also knowing the water temperature so you can decide what presentation you should use, how fast, what cadence, you know, all those things. And all of that comes from electronics. Now, I will say that this is the one place that I tell you not to skimp. Actually, there's two: the paddle and the depth finder. Don't buy the most basic, cheap unit that you can, because you won't be happy with it after about 6 months. You're gonna end up buying another one. Unless you buy that one and you plan on adding a second one down the road, buy a small, affordable combination unit if you can. Because the other thing that a graph does for you is it gives you really good mapping access, but you can see the mapping out in front of you instead of having to dig your phone out and pull up the map and figure out where you're at. And if you can go split screen, then you've got your map up and you've got your graph, so you can see where you are and you can see what you're seeing under the water. Just knowing kind of where you are relative to a drop off, relative to a hump, and then verifying it on your screen is going to push your confidence through the roof, probably more than anything else. Couple that with some pre-trip planning. You expected to see it, now you go out there, you're seeing it, then there's bait fish there, the water temperature's right, things are starting to line up for your kayak fishing success. And so again, the number 3 thing that I think you should do is invest in some quality electronics. There's really nice affordable units. The Hook 2 series from Lowrance comes to mind. But knowing where the food is, what the water temperature is, and understanding how that all works together and knowing where you are goes a long ways to increasing your fishing success. All right, guys, so the number 4 thing you should do to increase your kayak fishing success is be very mindful of managing your boat position. The number 1 tool that you can use to do that is a paddle. Listen, I'm a big fan of motors. I'm becoming a bigger fan of pedal drive kayaks. But listen, bass live in grass. Bass live in shallow, weeded out areas. They live where there's a lot of wood, and a lot of times you can't use a motor and you can't use a pedal drive. So a good paddle is the way to get into those fish and catch them where others can't. Now, buy once, cry once, okay? Buy the best paddle that you possibly can, because this thing is going to be a push pole, it's going to be a pry bar, but more importantly, the stealthiest way that you can fish is with a paddle. It's more stealthy than a pedal drive, it's more stealthy than a motor, because you can actually put this thing in the water and just ease along real slow. In a lot of cases, you can just actually grab the bottom, push yourself along. When you're standing up, you can paddle with this and maneuver yourself. So invest in a good paddle. It doesn't matter if you use a motor or a pedal drive. Invest in a good paddle, because this is the best way to manage boat position. The other key to managing boat position is, before you make a presentation, let's say you're going to cast towards a bank, get rid of the resultant movement going towards that bank before you make a cast. And let me explain that. The number 1 thing that I see, mistake I see anglers making when it comes to losing a fish, right? You've made the cast, you've chose the right lure, the right place, the right cadence, the right presentation, everything was right. You set the hook, you're fighting that fish. Now the fish is coming at you and you're coming at it, advantage fish. So there's 2 things that I usually do. One, if I'm going in with the motor, I usually shut the motor down way out and I'll just kind of tic-tac my pedals, so I'm kind of bleeding off my speed going left and right. The other thing I'll do is I'll take my paddle, dig it in the water, and get rid of some of my speed, or I'll take my paddle, put it in on one side, and just push hard, and that'll make my boat turn, because about 95% of the time I want to make a cast at about a 45-degree angle. That's going to do a couple things for me. One, it's going to make it easier and give me room for the hook set. Secondly, you never want to set your hook facing directly at a fish, because if you set the hook directly in line with the fish, that's the direction that the boat's most efficient. Now, if you have a pedal drive with reverse, if you have your motor set to reverse, you can do some of those things, but by and large, if you get out of the habit of setting the hook straight on, you're going to catch more fish, because you're going to have the side of the boat, which is harder to pull against, helping you not get pulled towards the fish. Again, if you're pulled towards the fish and you're not using a high-speed gear ratio reel, if you don't have a longer rod, that fish is going to run at you. It's pulling you towards it. It makes that jump. The rod gets straight. You get slack in the line. You lose the fish. I say all the time, you should get confidence from losing a fish because you did everything right but the fight. But the key to being successful in a fish fight in a kayak is managing boat position. Get rid of your drift. Use an anchor if you can. I'm a big fan of the Anchor Wizard because it's easy to use. I highly recommend that you don't use it when you first get started as a kayak angler. Get a little bit of experience first, and definitely don't use it in current, especially heavy current. But an anchor where you can just turn the handle, drop that thing down, and it's going to hold you in place. That's also going to help when you set that hook and the fish wants to pull you into it. So an anchor and a paddle are probably the two best things you can do for managing boat position. But the other thing is just to be cognizant of your boat position before you make the cast, before you set the hook, and that's going to catch you a heck of a lot more fish. In a lot of cases, I'll actually turn my rudder or I'll turn my motor away from the cover. I'll throw up in there when I set the hook. Just the natural orientation of the boat will make the boat turn away, and it'll give me the advantage instead of giving the fish advantage. So again, the number 4 thing that I think you should do to increase your kayak fishing success is manage your boat position. And that starts with getting rid of resultant movement unless you're moving, and that's part of your presentation. Yeah, so the number 5 thing that you should do to increase your kayak fishing success is to eliminate noise everywhere that you possibly can. I'm a big fan of traction pads on kayaks. They get rid of the noise when you're standing on the boat. They get rid of the noise when you set a tool down. They get rid of the noise when you drop a set of pliers. So traction pads or some type of foam inlay inside your boat, whether it comes from the manufacturer or you apply it afterwards, is the way to go. You want to eliminate bumping your boat everywhere that you can, because kayak fishing is super stealthy. But if you don't manage your noise, you are going to spook fish. In fact, a lot of times when you go into unpressured waters, yes, those fish have never seen a lure, but they've also never seen a person or a boat before. So every foreign noise is going to be more likely to spook those fish. The number one culprit that I see is folks taking their paddle and bumping it against the side of the boat when they're paddling. So select the right size paddle, have the right paddle stroke, but don't bump your paddle against the side of your boat, and don't just drop your paddle on the kayak. Think of it like this. Sound travels 4 times as fast in water as it does in air. So if you bump a fishing kayak, it's going to transmit that sound through the hull into the water, and it's going to spook fish. We get a false sense of security a lot of times as kayak anglers that just because we're in a kayak, you know, we somehow have some force field around us that makes us stealthy, and we do. That's why I say pick a paddle, because it's the quietest and stealthiest way to go in. It's part of managing noise. But again, don't bump your boat. Don't bang it on your boat. Don't drop your pliers. Don't drop your rod down inside the boat. Manage your noise. Be stealthier, and you're going to catch more fish. That's your motor. That's your paddle. That's your pliers. That's all the things that you do in your boat. And there's one other thing that makes noise that a lot of folks don't realize, and that is your electronics. So yes, I told you to use your electronics, but if you get in shallow water or you get right on top of fish, most electronics, most brands have a thing where you hit the power button one time, it brings up a panel, and there's a thing called stop sonar. If I get right on top of fish, or if I get in shallow water, I will turn my sonar off, because if that thing is transmitting a signal to go out and hit something and send a signal back, fish can also feel that in a lot of cases through their lateral line. Their lateral line is so sensitive that they can feel a bait fish fart from like 30 feet away. So if they can feel a bait fish fart from 30 feet away, they can definitely feel that signal or that pulsing or that clicking that's coming from your electronics. So use those electronics when it makes sense and where it makes sense. But if you get on top of pressured fish especially, shut your electronics off. So again, guys, the number 5 thing is to be sure that you manage your noise, be mindful of bumping your boat, be as quiet as you can, and you'll catch more fish. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this video on the top 5 things I think you can do to improve your kayak fishing success. Listen, if I missed one, light me up in the comment section below. If I choose your comment to create a video in the future, I'll shout you out in that video, and I'll also give you a $50 gift card just for helping me help you, help me help you. I'll see y'all in the next video.